Good afternoon, everybody. It's Talina here from Mom and Pop Wine Shop, and today we're going to be interviewing Brendan Simpers of Willow Wine Cellars, and going to see if I can get him on the line right now. We're going to chat with him about the club selection that we chose for this month. That's got a little bit of Cabernet Franc in it for fun. And it looks like he's joining right now. Let's see if we can get him in our camera view. There we go. So today, with our wine club launching in March, we have his Merlot and Cabernet Franc, and we he's having some trouble here. Let's try one more time. And we paired him with some. Let's see. We paired him with an Albarino, since he's a fan of drinking Albarino, as all of us are, I'm sure, especially with spring coming. And let's try again here. Sorry, we're having a little bit of trouble. In any case, we also put our, says he's unable to join. Let me see if I can try his regular personal account. We might have to postpone this until we can figure out how to get him on here. I apologize, everybody. Give us a few minutes and we'll see. There he is. Yay!
There we go.
Wonderful. Never goes as smoothly as I like, but that's how it is.
Well, yeah, like I said, I've been used to Zoom all year, so this is my first Instagram Live interview.
Yeah. Well, thanks for carving out some time. I know as a family person myself, juggling your business and the kiddos being around, it's really appreciated that you're taking some time to speak with us today. So thank you.
Oh, gosh, I'm happy to do it. The kids are just watching a movie with mom right now, so
perfect.
It's a good time to do it. It just started storming and it's cloudy and cold and rainy, so they're cuddled up on the couch, and I'm in here drinking wine, talking to you guys.
Perfect. Yeah. So I always like to give people a little bit of the backstory about where you came from and where you're going. So how does a kid in a tasting room in Virginia end up starting his own winery in Washington? Take us on the journey.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's okay. That could be a short or a long story, but
it's your choice, man. You're the tour guide.
Yes, I was a tour guide for a long time. So yeah, I guess I went to Virginia Tech. I was born and raised Northern Virginia. I was a hospitality student. That was my major, hospitality and tourism management. And let's see, where did it all start? I guess it started, I took the Virginia State enologist actually worked at Virginia Tech, so they actually had a really good, not a wine program, not like the Walla Walla or WSU where you could necessarily learn all the chemistry and microbiology, but they had like a winery tourism class that tied into hospitality. They had just a very basic sensory evaluation class, and that was the first one I took. It was one of those classes where it was like, wait, you're in college and you can take this class where you sip on wine and you get a college credit for it. Like, cool, okay. And then going through that class it was really cool. It was just an eye opener of like, wow, this seems like a really, really interesting industry. And even just the tasting and evaluating seemed challenging. Like not everybody can do it. There's this mystery behind wine that's really cool. So I just sort of decided to pursue it from there. I think it was the following summer, being home from college, that I had never been wine tasting, and I actually credit my mother with this idea. We went home. She knew I had taken that college class, and she said, "Oh, do you want to go wine tasting?" Does Virginia have any wineries? Sure, I guess. And we got online and looked up the closest winery, and lo and behold, 20 minutes away from where I grew up. Never knew it was there. We went to Chrysalis Winery and Vineyards, and that was the other moment where I was like, okay, I want to work here. It's sort of a cliche moment, but it's all estate, all inclusive, wineries there, the owner's house is there, gorgeous Blue Ridge Mountains. They've got livestock, chickens and cows, and all estate grown. So they grow all their own fruit, make all their own wine. And driving up to the winery was one of those, all right, I'm applying when I get in. So we went and we tasted, and I asked the tasting attendant, I was like, can I fill out an application? And then that was my summer job. And again,
that's crazy. That's fast.
So I think probably had just turned 21. Again, didn't know anything about wine. I think in school we drank Miller Lite or Bud Light, and that was it. And I knew what Chardonnay and Merlot were, and that was about it. And then that whole summer, again, sort of like taking that class in college, just being really fun and interesting. That whole summer was just fun. I got to meet really cool people and just learn every day and be outside pouring wine and talking to cool people. So it was one of those jobs, you hear people say, just find a job you love and it won't feel like work. And it never felt like work. I got to have fun and get paid for it. So I was like, maybe I should look into this. So I would say it stemmed definitely from that first job, pouring wine behind the bar.
So you continued with your degree and finished in hospitality, or did you decide to make wine and go, transfer someplace where you could pursue that specific part?
I did finish my degree. It was a weird time, looking back, obviously I might do things differently, but
sure.
When I was already 2 years through college. So it was, I had a path and I was like, I should finish. Like I would feel like I wasted these first 2 years. So I finished with two bachelors in management and hospitality management. But yes, halfway through I realized, I want to do wine. And I had already sort of forgotten all my high school chemistry and all that. So I was like, maybe it's for me. Maybe it's not. I should finish my degrees and maybe just be on the hospitality side of the wine industry. That definitely fit in, with that path. So I finished with the 2 degrees, knowing that I wanted to make wine. Senior year, I definitely bugged my roommates every week. I was the guy, no, guy, sit down, evaluate this wine with me, and help me dissect this wine. And they're like, okay. So I was definitely nerding out on wine very, very early.
Yeah. Was it at your table when you were growing up in your family?
Yes and no. It wasn't a big part of the meal. My dad was more of a whiskey drinker, I guess. And I enjoy whiskey and scotch and all that, but so no, wine specifically was not a big part of our culture growing up. I'm just curious because you were already much further ahead. I mean, there's a generational difference between you and me, but also I grew up in Pennsylvania where the wine scene is god awful, so it's changing. But certainly it's not something that I would have discovered very readily. So I'm a little jealous there. It took me a little longer to find it. So what came next then? You came to the West Coast. Yeah, so a couple things sort of worked together. I had, believe it or not, been trying to plan a cross-country road trip with my second grade best friend. For some reason, that was something we had thought of and dreamed of, staying up late doing sleepovers, we're going to travel cross country when we're done with high school. And we didn't do it after high school because we went to different colleges and we had no money. But so that was always sort of on my bucket list, so to say. So as soon as I graduated college, even though I still didn't have any money, I had no debt as well. So I was sort of lucky there and scrounged up some cash and headed out west with the idea. Actually, plan A was a very good friend of mine, a friend of my dad's, lives up in Whistler, Canada. They own a concierge service downtown. They sort of take care of all the hotels down there. So I was just gonna sort of take some time after school and help her. That would fit right in with hospitality. So I was like, oh, that'll be easy. I'll be a ski bum and work hospitality and just have fun. And plan B after that was to figure something out to do with wine. But plan A didn't work because I couldn't get a work visa to pan out, working across in Canada. So on my cross-country road trip, I spent one day and night in Napa Valley and met some just amazing people there who actually were also Virginia Tech alumni from a different year. So I didn't know them, but I remember I spent the night with them. They were super sweet, and I left the next day and they gave me that sort of warm welcome, like, oh, just call, and anytime you're back, just call us. Like, we'd love to see you again. And I think it was a week after I learned that my work visa in Canada wasn't gonna work out. I called Natalie and I was like, hey, remember me? I stayed with you.
Going to California.
Like, can I live with you while I look for a job? So she was like, oh, okay. So I drove right back down and I stayed with them. I mean, honestly, for a couple months while I looked for a job, they sort of saved me. I don't know what I would have done. It was really hard to find a job, and again, I was very, very short on cash, so they just let me stay with them, no questions asked, and gave me a home until I landed a job I had two jobs. I worked at the Model Bakery, just serving coffee and baked goods, and then I eventually landed a job I was looking for in hospitality at Beringer Vineyards, of all places, which I loved. There's just so much history to the whole valley, really, but Beringer obviously is one of the oldest. I'll go into tour guide mode now. The oldest continually operating winery in the United States.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. Those iconic properties, I think, are so charming for folks who haven't been to Napa. Like the newer construction that is really showy, in some of the sites it's fun to see, but just seeing these little farmhouses and the operations where they sprung up and then expanded is really, really heartwarming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Is the bakery where you met Tarna?
It is, yes. So
His
that
wife.
is, yeah, that's a whole other big part of the story. We were just talking about this the other day, just talking about how it's funny how things work out. If one thing had gone another way, we wouldn't have met. And but yeah, so that was my first job full time before I got Beringer, and then when I got the Beringer job, I decided to keep the bakery part time. So I was there 1 to 2 days a week, basically to get my free coffee and bagel in the morning before I went to Beringer. Perks of the job. And then Tarna started working there as well. I forget exactly when, but shortly after I was there, and yeah, we met, and my morning routine of I'll stop and get a cup of coffee and a bagel on my way to work turned into, oh, that girl's really cute. I think I'll go earlier and sit at the bakery and enjoy my coffee and bagel so I can talk to the cute girl behind the counter. And I kept getting up earlier and earlier to
Sure.
get there an hour and a half ahead and just read a book, and again, chat with the cute girl behind the counter. So, yeah. And then we started dating very, very shortly after that.
So besides Beringer, there are a few other iconic names who had quite an influence on your trajectory before Tarna's roots in Hood River pulled you to Oregon. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of those?
Like places I worked, or just people in general?
Places you loved, Minor family in particular, I'd say is a really interesting part of how you got started with your own winery too. So, yeah,
gosh, there's so many people that, again, this was what Tarn and I were talking about the other day. We were actually looking through our Kickstarter list. We had done a Kickstarter in 2013, and we were both honestly tearing up just going through the list, reminding ourselves how many people helped us get to where we are. it's, yeah, a joint effort for sure. Starting in Napa, just all the people we met, the guy who, the place we lived, first of all, we moved into a one-room cabin right next to a vineyard up in Angwin, and Mike and Kara Dunn. So there's an old, I never met his dad, but if there's any Napa Cabernet fanatics watching right now, they might recognize the name Randy Dunn. He's one of the older producers down there. So we lived on one of his properties with his daughter, Kara Dunn, and Mike, and they were super sweet. And then they introduced us to their friends just across the road, who I told you about, Kalina, Summit Lake Vineyards, Mark and Heather. And so they have Summit Lake Vineyards, all estate grown. And he was the vineyard manager for Harlan Estate, or one of Harlan's wineries. He's got several, very, one of those cult wineries, just crazy high end, ridiculously good Cabernets. So it was just, we were all having dinner one night, and we were just chatting about, like, oh gosh, I want to sort of try doing a harvest, get out of hospitality, and see if I like working in the cellar and if I can even handle it. And so Mark just right away was like, oh, you just want to work a pump all day and do pumpers? I was like, sure, great, whatever. And he was like, oh, I'll talk to the wine guy where I work. Okay. And he got me my first internship at again, one of those crazy exclusive high-end wineries called the Napa Valley Reserve. And I was the pump over guy. So in the thick of the internship, it was really hard to feel like I was learning a whole lot, because they gave me my one job, my one pump, and that was all that I did, and everyone else was off doing the destemming and the pressing and everything else. So, but it was great. I mean, I mastered that pump, and I got really good at it, and that was a great opportunity, because up until then I had done a tiny bit of classwork after working Behringer and the bakery during the day. I took a couple of night classes at Napa Valley Community College. So I think once a week for 3 hours, like 5:30 to 8:30 at night, just the basics, general enology, general viticulture. And it was hard for me to make sense of it all. It was all still new to me. I knew the very basics of winemaking. So I'm a very hands-on kind of guy, trial and error. So it was great to finally, like I said, just use the pump. Whereas like in enology class, they tell you, oh, this is a pump. There's different kinds of pump, low pump, positive distribution, and it's just very boring and technical, and it doesn't make sense until you're working a pump. So that was good to get your hands dirty and learn how to use the equipment. So
yeah, I think for folks who don't spend any time connected to the wine industry, it's hard to understand what kind of cohesion exists, even among people who may someday be competitors. There's so much sharing, and it's said from the standpoint of growers and winemakers and retailers and distributors. It's a very help oriented business, and I think your story demonstrates that for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, Napa as well. When we moved up here, it was unfortunate. There were a couple people that, I don't know, they have this idea of Napa, which, Napa, the prices are a little crazy. Land prices went up, grape prices went up, so then the wine prices went up. So it was sort of a surreal experience living there and working there. We're working behind the bar serving coffee, and in walks the David Beckham and his family, and I was doing a pump over, again, just dirty, got wine all over me, and Ryan Seacrest walked in, and the winery I worked at, Nicolas Cage owns a couple of the vineyard rows there, so it was a little crazy, but but everyone, like, it's a farm town. It's vineyards and farms, so everyone that lives there and works there. You've got 400 wineries within 30 miles of each other. So who's working those jobs? The hospitality people. So everyone's just super nice. We enjoyed it.
It's, I want to segue to thinking about Washington, where you are now. And it's funny because I remember a time when, when Cab was king in California, and Oregon was getting, you know, all this press from the beginning for Pinot Noir. And Washington for me was always very closely associated with Merlot because of some of the early, you know, amazing wines that came out of Leonetti. And then suddenly we had this stupid movie called Sideways that came out, and the shorthand word Merlot, like I love red wine, I like something plush and deep and kind of fun to sip, suddenly became passé. So now that we're on Instagram, which is very hip, and there's a different, you know, fashion around wine, I just am really excited to be able to be presenting something that I consider a classic, like a Washington Merlot. So let's talk a little bit about the spaces that you work in Washington, you know, since you have different fruit sources that are very different from each other.
Yeah, about which vineyards we source from.
Yeah, and where you're located now, and you know,
Yeah,
all the nuts and bolts of Willow wine cellars.
yeah, we are located in the Columbia Gorge, just across the river from where my wife grew up. So she grew up in Hood River.
Mm-hmm.
And again, sort of backtracking a little bit, I didn't know anything about Oregon or Washington when we lived in California. When my wife, then fiance, told me, "Oh, I'm from Hood River," I was like, "What? You know, where is that?" And I knew that Oregon had a town called Portland, and that they made good Pinot Noir. That was the extent of it. But I remember our first trip up here to visit her family. We went wine tasting, and we tasted at a couple places. And there was really only one wine that stood out to us. They're no longer in business, but they still sell the fruit. The winery was called Dry Hollow. The vineyard's called High Valley. And that Merlot, I just remember turning to Tara. I was like, man, this is really good. This is really special. And that one definitely stood out to us. And we've worked with that fruit since 2014. And talking to a couple of the other winemakers around here that get that same fruit, I've heard it from them as well. Rich Cushman, Peter Cushman. There's just something special about that vineyard site. I don't know what. I can't tell you really the specific soil type that they have there, but I know it's a higher elevation, and they're just doing a good job farming it. So that was the first eye opener of like, wow, especially coming from Napa, who does good Cab but also good Merlot.
Yeah.
Those are the two main reds. So I was like, wow, that they're doing a really good Merlot up here. And I'm glad you mentioned Sideways, because it was sort of those two things that made me want to make a Merlot. There's a few wines that we do that we make because we love, but we also make because some people don't like them, or they think they don't like them. Like we make a Riesling, and a lot of people, they come taste it, like, oh, can I skip the Riesling? I don't like sweet wines. I'm like, well,
I was going to ask you that question.
yeah. So that's one of them. Like, I never thought I'd make a Riesling. Merlot, honestly, I never thought I would make, because when you're thinking of starting a winery, you get the same question. Well, how are you going to be different from all the other wineries? And I never knew how to answer that question, because there's so many wineries, and like I can't reinvent the industry or make a whole new grape. So it's like you go to, okay, well, what are some obscure varieties that we can do that no one else is doing? Albarino was one of them. But I kept falling back on Merlot, and I think it was because we love Cabernet Franc so much, and the fact that Merlot and Cab Franc work so well together. I was like, well, I have to make this. And again, the goal was to just change people's minds about Merlot, because I loved Merlot, and I didn't like the way most people were making it. I don't know when it started. Maybe you know the history of it, but it did, besides Sideways, it did go through a very weird, awkward phase where people were making it like a Cabernet Sauvignon. They were putting a lot of big, heavy new oak behind it, and it was very sweet and ripe and over extracted and just sort of gross. And I just don't like that. And we, my wife and I, are very sensitive to oak, so we make it just a little more subtle. Like, it's not supposed to be a big oaky wine. It's very subtle, mid-body palate, good tannin and ageability, just like Cab, but it's meant to be just savored, and it's an everyday drinking wine. I mean, there's a reason both Merlot and Cab Sauv have been around as long as they have. They're some of the best they make some of the best wines out there. So
yeah, I think sometimes when people in the industry and customers see high scores being awarded to certain wines, they look at the way the wines are aged and they think about, well, how can I, what are the things that I can do that are similar to the way this wine is aged maybe. And, Merlot is a grape that really thrives with a little bit of depth of clay in the soil classically in Bordeaux. And there's not a lot of that in Washington. There's a few pockets, but you have this silty, like loamy, free draining soil, especially where you get some of yours like in Yakima and such. And those wines are a little bit more graceful and can't handle a ton of new oak, and some of the quote unquote best Merlots are really terrible until they've aged about 10 years. And so, but we're not about that. We're about something that's ready to drink now. So that we're always trying to target things that are made in a way that is suitable for food and that doesn't require aging forever and ever to be able to enjoy and crack open with friends. So
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because that's, one of the most common questions in any wine bar or tasting room is how long should I age this, or how long can I age this? And I never know how to answer that either, because I told you the other day, I'm horrible at hanging on to wines. I drank that Albarino I got from you the night I got home with it. And same thing with our wines. When people ask, I'm like, just drink it when you get home. I prefer younger wines. They're fresher. They have all their fruit. When they get older, I don't know if I just haven't had many really great older wines, or if I just don't like them. The fruit goes away, and it's hard. But the ones I've had, I'm like, it's just tired, and the freshness goes away. So
yeah. So tell us a little bit about your spot in Underwood Mountain now.
Yeah, I'm looking at the people joining. I recognize a lot of the names, a lot of wine club members, and
great
people who donated to the Kickstarter. We are nothing fancy. If the people who are listening are drinking along, if they bought the bottle, if you notice on the back label, we don't really put a descriptor. We put wine for drinking on all the labels, because we try to bring wine from up here down here. It's there's nothing really complicated about drinking it. It's a beverage that should be enjoyed by everyone. So our place here sort of looks like how we make the wine. It's out of our garage. Nothing fancy at all. We have a lot of people come up the driveway, see our yellow manufactured home and the half finished garage, and they turn right around. Because it doesn't look like a winery, but the people that stay for they literally say they come into our basically backyard that adjoins to the winery, and sometimes they're like, I just feel like I'm tasting wine in your yard right now. I'm like, well, you are. And so our goal actually to go back to Mark and Heather, who got me that first intern job. So he's a vineyard manager for one of the wealthiest, most well-known cult wineries in Napa. But then their winery, Summit Lake Vineyards, you go and you taste, and it's out of their garage, and they've got plastic poly tanks and a tiny screw press. And it started raining, and they were like, oh, come inside, come in our kitchen and finish the tasting. And it was just really homey and intimate, and like, you don't get that experience when you go to Napa unless you know where to go and those secret spots. So living in Napa for a few years, on the Disneyland attraction, Highway 29, the Mondavis and the Beringers and all that, to taste in Mark and Heather's kitchen, Napa Valley Cab Sauv for $35 a bottle that they made in the garage was. It's like, oh, if we start a winery, we got to do it like this. So yeah, that's always been one of our goals, is to just be a no frills kind of winery, focus on the wine and not looking good. So
yeah. Are you going to be holding regular tasting hours come summer at the winery? How are you going to handle that?
We will probably, I don't know, that's always in flux, but right now we're by appointment, and we will probably stay by appointment for now. It's worked really well for us, especially because we're still so small and not very busy.
Sure.
So it's just been really nice having the girls and being a dad first, knowing exactly when I'm getting tasters, so that I can plan my day around that. So
Great.
we'll be by appointment probably
So
through the summer.
perfect. So let's talk a little bit about Bouchy Vineyard, where you get the fruit for this wine.
Yeah.
Legendary grower.
Yeah. I think
How'd you meet him? How'd you get connected?
Definitely through James. So my first, so I did 2 harvests, one in Napa, one at Domaine Pouillon in 2011. And then I was still working a wine bar as well at the Pines Winery, downtown Hood River. And then the following harvest, 2012, is when I did the harvest at Syncline Winery out in Lisle, Washington.
Yeah.
And that was my first cellar gig. So, usually you're an intern and then they don't need you after harvest. All the craziness is done. But for some reason, he either liked me or just was looking for some help in the vineyard doing whatever. So he asked me to stay on, and I left hospitality and finally was a full-time cellar vineyard guy. And so it was definitely through James, because he had been working with Dick Boucher for already, almost 20 years. And when I fell in love with Cab Franc was when he thanks Tarna, the hair.
He says it was your hair. Yeah.
I people who would come to Syncline, they were like, "Are you James's brother or son?" Like, no, I'm much better looking, but so yeah, James, I was looking for Cab Franc, and he knew Dick grew Cab Franc. And I was like, "Oh, can I call him?" And he was like, "Well, let me call him and talk to Dick." And so James set me up with Dick Boucher at first. So
Cool.
yeah, I sort of had the in.
So for folks who aren't in the wine biz and don't know about that vineyard, what would you tell them?
That Dick is the quintessential farmer. Like, again, I think I told you in an email, I know more about Dick and the wines that we make from that particular block than I do about his vineyard and the soils and the climate. He farms 650 acres. He's one of those guys, you meet him and you just immediately love him. He's got permanent smile wrinkles all over his face and his cheeks. And I don't know how he does what he does. His fruit, whenever it comes in, it's just super clean. Before I even started working with it, I did a few harvests at Syncline, and I'd be up on the destemming table, and we're moving through a couple of different lots, and then all of a sudden they'd start dumping this one bin, and I'd start sorting through it, and I remember shouting down to James, I was like, "This is Boucher fruit, isn't it?" And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I could tell. It's perfect. It's clean. There's no mold. There's no leaves. You didn't have to sort it." And it just made our lives so much easier. And again, every year, it's been amazing fruit. So I love working with him.
Yeah, I mean, he started planting in the 80s, and has just grown since then. And people always ask him, "Are you going to make wine? Are you going to make wine?" And he just keeps farming fruit.
Yeah, stick with what you know. He does it. And he does it well. And
yeah, for sure. So we also carry your Albarino, and you make Riesling, which is delicious. And when I met with you last time, I was really torn about which of the wines that you presented that I was going to work with first, because they're all so great. So, what do you have in the works coming up?
Oh man, I wish I should have brought you a sample of that Chardonnay. We just bottled, I guess technically our 3rd Chardonnay, but we're really excited about this one. So 2019, we harvested the first crop off the estate here, which again, we don't own any of this really. We're leasing the house and the wine space. So the landlord, Tom Lumpkin, planted 3 acres of Chardonnay. 2019 was the first crop off of it. And we took that lot and we sort of split it up just to see how it would perform. So we harvested it to be a sparkling. So we picked it very early, low pH, high acid, very low alcohol. But then we also took 1 barrel and we bottled almost half as a regular Chardonnay. And then the other half we sparkled up. And then that same year, we also did different Chardonnay from a vineyard just down the road from us, so Underwood Fruit again. And that was a little more, not new oak, but twice used barrels. So neutral, but newer than anything else that we had been using prior. Most of our barrels are from the early 2000s, so pretty neutral.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about that one. It's, again, Chardonnay is not one, there's a lot of Chardonnays out there. So same thing with Riesling and Merlot. I never thought I'd be making a Chardonnay, but a couple years living in the Gorge and tasting other wineries Chardonnays, it was that light bulb of like, why do these taste so good? What is it about this climate and just the way they're making it? So finally I was like, these are so good. I gotta try making a Chardonnay. And then also trying to change people's minds, because the people that don't like sweet Rieslings, some people either love stainless steel Chardonnay or love the really big oaky buttery Chardonnays, but you don't hear anything about the in-between. And I love the in-between because there's benefits of both. So this one that we're excited about, we did sort of both. It didn't see any stainless. It was all barrel fermented, but not neutral and not new. So somewhere in between. A little bit of malic and a little bit of malolactic fermentation. So it's got the crisp acidity. It's got a little bit of the barrel quality, the mid palate feel and weightiness, and from stirring up the lees in the barrels. So we're really excited about that one. We have a couple different Cab Francs in the barrel because I love Cab Franc and have been wanting to try different climates and clones and soil types and all that. So 3 different Cab Francs, 2 other wines. We're actually going to have a separate label coming up that was sort of the brainchild of my wife. Being near the Columbia River, water is in every day, it's part of our everyday lives. Everyone, we need water to survive, and that was one reason we moved from Napa. We needed to be near water. We love water, whether it's going to be ocean or lakes or rivers. So we feel a strong need to help protect it, and we make wine. So we wanted to come up with a label that we could donate part of the proceeds to the local Columbia Gorge River Keepers. So we're going to have, for the first time, a white blend and a red blend, sort of called, just the Water Keeper series. And so that's been a fun project in the works. That we've never really had a blend. We've done sort of single variety. So those are, I think, the main things coming down the pipeline. We'll have those sparklings in bottle. We did a small Blanc de Blanc and a Blanc de Noir as well. So lots of new things coming out.
Yeah, I mean, for folks who haven't caught on, like your MO is great freshness in the wines, native yeast ferments, using, neutral barrel-ish, right? And I think really carving out a niche in, using this great Underwood Mountain fruit, I think bears a really nice future for you. For folks who don't know about Underwood Mountain, do you want to tell them a little bit about what makes it special?
Oh man, I mean, a lot of things, but I sort of equate it to Red Mountain in the sense that you would think one of the warmest climates in comparison to other wine growing regions. If you think of Napa, like it's sort of similar degree days and a lot of heat, and you would think that you couldn't make wine there, and people definitely did not think you could make wine there until Kiona was one of the first to plant on Red Mountain. Everyone told him he was crazy. Like, why would you do that?
Lemberger too, right? It was Lemberger.
Lemberger, yeah. What? Wait, what? So I equate it to that simply because the wines that I've had off of Red Mountain, they first of all retain their pH. With the heat, for some reason, like the sugars go up and then they stay where they need to stay, and the pH stays where it needs to stay. Whereas in just a crazy hot climate without the cool nights, the sugars would just keep going up, and you just lose a bunch of acidity, and the wine would just be boring and flabby. But Red Mountain is just, there's a vigor to the wines. There's an intensity to the wines and an ageability to the wines. And Underwood is like that, with the soils and the climate and everything coming together. Just comparing it to other very close local regions, like Hood River is just valley floor, deep, lush soils, and just something about the wines coming off of Underwood I have found to be more vigorous and fresh, and they retain their acidity. We're never lacking for acidity on Underwood.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, the climate and the acidity, I would say, is two of the main things that make them interesting.
Cool. Yeah, I would second that. That's one of the reasons why I liked this wine so much. I've tried it with a bunch of different foods, and it's always been really, really gratifying. And I've pulled out different flavors each time. So thank you. Yeah. Are there any other highlights that you want to mention before we turn everybody loose?
About Willow, or just the gorge?
Yeah, about Willow, or about wine. It's something that you've run into. Whatever. It's your chance to talk to the people.
I mean, highlights. If you've never been to the Columbia Gorge, you should definitely come visit. I see someone, she mentioned the $1 million views, which I never get sick of those. We have people stop. There's sort of a viewpoint, near our house, and people traveling through just stop there and take pictures and videos, and we get to see that every day. So even if you don't come for the wine, come for the views. No, I mean, nothing I can think of right now, but I'm sure I'll think of something if people ask questions.
Yeah. Do you want to talk really briefly about the Albarino that we also carry at our shop? Tell the folks a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Albarino, for those of you who know me or have been, know that I love Albarino. It was probably one of the first wines I ever had and fell in love with. But also at the same time, it wasn't one of those, I tried it and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I have to make an Albarino. It sort of just came naturally that, like I said, when we were thinking about starting a winery, it's like, oh, what can we do differently that nobody else is doing? And then I was like, oh, well, what about Albarino? Like, who grows it? And it was really hard to find. There weren't that many people growing it. It's one of those sort of chicken and egg problems where I would love to make, like the white blend that we're doing. The goal is to have it be a Spanish white blend. Right now it's mostly Albarino. It's hard to find people growing Verdejo or Trishadora or anything. So you have to sort of convince a grower to dedicate a couple acres to grow it, and then 4 years later get the grapes. So they're not going to grow it unless they know someone's going to buy it from them. So yeah, it's hard to do that. But I lucked out with the Albarino. Inland Desert Nursery had just planted what they call their mother block. So their main business is selling to growers. So if you're a grower and you want to grow Albarino, you would contact these guys. They would harvest the canes or the sticks off of the vineyard to then propagate for a year or two and then sell to the grower. So they had one tiny little acre of this, and I don't think many other people were growing Albarino at the time. And it had all been, I contacted them. They're like, well, we don't have that much of it, and someone's already contracted it for this year. I was like, all right, bummer. Maybe I just won't make wine this year. And then they called me at almost last minute. I think it was a month before harvest. And they're like, hey, this guy backed out. Do you want it? And I was like, oh gosh, like I haven't planned on this. Like I just wasn't planning on starting a winery this year. I didn't have any fruit lined up. And another guy I was working with at Syncline at the time, he had made Albarino in the past. And he was like, if you don't get it, I'm going to buy it. I was like, oh, no, I'll make it happen. I'll make it happen. I didn't want to lose the fruit. So he actually also pushed me and encouraged me into doing it and making the jump and spending the money on it and buying the equipment. So, so Albarino, just, I mean, gosh, what can I say about it? I also love it because I love oysters on the half shell. Just perfect pairing. And it's just one of those different, unique wines that, I mean, any wine can be made 1,000 different ways, but I love that retains its acidity, very food friendly, crisp, usually dry, mid-body palate. And I love what I'm discovering. I haven't had many aged Albarinos, but we did a fun oyster event a couple months ago where we opened up. They weren't crazy old, but 2014, 2015, 2016, we opened all those up with some oysters, and everyone preferred the older ones. So it's really cool to see that Albarino can sort of do it all. It's tastes good fresh. It can last in the bottle. So I just love everything about it.
Great. Well, we're glad you made it. All right. Well, I really appreciate everybody joining in. And again, I want to thank you for your time. And I look forward to making our way out to the gorge this summer with my family to see your operation sometime and to see some other neighbors that are there.
Yeah, for
enjoy
sure.
those gorgeous views.
When you see the yellow manufactured house, don't turn around. It's a winery.
That's fine. I lived in an RV for like 2 years traveling around, so you can't scare me. Cool. Well, thanks again, Brendan. And if anybody's interested in picking up the wine club that we're talking about that has a classic Spanish Albarino, and it has Brendan's beautiful Merlot Cabernet Franc, and along with some killer hot sauce and some cool art, we still have a few available at the wine shop for you. And thanks again. It's great to talk to you, and I look forward to meeting Tarna at some point too.
Yeah. Come anytime, please. Let us know.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
Bye, guys.